Hi, this is Ria Flanagan with the Happiness Podcast Playbook Series, and I'm not even saying it right today because it's Sunday, right? And Sunday's kind of a day off, but we are very lucky to have Kelli here with us. I used to work with her at the Meadows, and for many years we both worked there. And she now has her own private practice, counselingwithkelly.com. And she's here today. We're going to talk a little bit about love addiction. We're going to talk a little bit about what Kelli does outside of just individual sessions. She also works with couples. She also does workshops. And we'll talk a little bit about the book, Happiness is an Inside Job Playbook. So excited to have you here, Kelli. And thank you. We had to remodel my office for this just for speaker quality. So that was fun.
Yeah, good time.
Good times. Yeah. She was very cool about it. All right. Kelli, take it away. Tell us a little bit about what you do.
Yeah, so in my private practice, I work with couples as well as individuals, and kind of my specialty areas are with trauma, or what I have a passion for, I should say, is with trauma and addiction. That's multiple addictions, sex, love, drugs, food, anything you want more of, right? That could be work, that could be anything that gives you a hit of dopamine, right?
So many things, even just doing things, right?
Doing things.
Anybody a doer? Overdoing?
Yep, overdoing. So that's kind of my passion, is where my heart is working with those people that kind of struggle with out of containment, out of moderation, just seeking what to fill this void, some void that's in here. And the setup from that is usually trauma.
Absolutely. I think that, whenever I'm working with supervisees, I'm always like, well, what are you doing for the trauma? Because again, we can't treat addiction if we're not treating the underlying core roots. And you and I both work with Pia's model, the overview of developmental and maturity issues. And so we have to look at the core issues. And throughout my book, I do interweave a lot of that. And one of the big things too with trauma is attachment, and that happens very early in life. We both do a workshop about childhood trauma. You want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. So the workshop can be anywhere from 1 day to 3 days, or potentially even longer. It's really individualized for each client. And it's to learn kind of, why am I how I am? Right? And what is getting in my way, and how can I heal these underlying wounds, right? Ultimately, our caregivers do the best they can. At least sometimes they do. I won't say always, right? But they impact us, right? For better or worse, right? We learn everything from them. We learn about how to be in relationship with others, right? We learn about how to be a woman, or how to be a man, or how to be a mom, right? How to be a dad. And so it's looking at, what did we learn? What's working for us? What's not working for us? And trying to heal anything that's not working. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think, you really say that. I always think like modeling is the way that we learn. And if we didn't have the best modeling, right, we have to go and learn those things. Because if we're, we're both parents, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's one of those things, if we're not mindful about parenting, we'll kind of do what our caregivers did. And some of those things weren't the best. So even starting to do this work and really starting to understand, how does this affect me with even my child? If we're not aware, if we're out of awareness, we're going to kind of repeat the pattern. And so a lot of this work too helps bring people more in awareness, more in their body, also moving out old things that don't make us feel good, because when we have that underlying trauma, we want to cover it up with something. And so understanding, I mean, I love Dr. work on addiction. He really talks about, recovery is about connection, right? And addiction, and addiction is, I don't know.
The opposite of connection.
It's the opposite of connection. Thanks, Kelli. This is why I have Kelli here, so I can forget things. She's got my back.
Yeah, we're a team. Yeah. Also, I just love working with trauma survivors, because I'm one myself and have been through my own stuff, and consider myself a trauma survivor, right, in recovery. And so I know what that can do for your system. You can get stuck on, you can get stuck off, you can be in shutdown, or you can be hypervigilant. And then it's, so what do I do with all this, right? How do I come back down, right? If my body has learned it's not safe, my brain has said it's not safe to come down from here, right? And so helping clients to come back down, right, and be safe in your body, or somebody's shut down, helping them know it's okay to come back out of shutdown, healing why they shut down, and then teaching the body it's okay to wake back up.
Yeah, and I think about seeing family, and when clients go and see family and then they're kind of regressed, or they feel like, oh my gosh, I felt like I was 12 years old again, or I felt 5 years old, or I didn't have my voice all of a sudden. That really speaks to triggers. So being triggered in the presence, right, of some family members, or if somebody reminds you of a perpetrator in your life or anything like that, it can create that sort of stuckness, hypervigilance or shutdown. And so those are some signs that trauma work would be really helpful. And I call mine the empowerment workshop. It does come from PM Melody's work, the post-induction therapy, really helping tap into, the trauma timeline and helping grow that part up and integrate and work on attachment and healing. And it's a really powerful workshop. I did it myself. I also have, a history of trauma they talk about in the very beginning of my book. And it really is what brought me to this work, and I'm passionate about it. And I love having other people around me that also do good work with it and are passionate about it. And you also work with couples. Tell me about that.
I love working with couples. I really think it holds a special place in my heart because as Ria and me both love the la stuff, that love addiction, love avoidance, and I got some of my own history there too. But working with couples, you get to see like how are we in relationship with one another and what are the dynamics. Often there's a push-pull. There's someone who's a pursuer and someone who's a distancer, or you get to see these patterns that kind of repeat. And I think unless somebody from the outside looking in goes, I wonder about this, or helps you put some things together, like I know people did for me. We almost have these blind spots on. And so I love working with clients and helping them uncover some of those blind spots and getting them to have these intimate conversations with each other, get down to an emotional, heartfelt level and having these just healing, connecting moments. Yeah.
Yeah, it's powerful. The couples work, I do some somatic couples work, and that's really noticing how they get in their bodies frozen. And you're talking about that too, right? How they interact and if they get triggered and, you can kind of see like someone sort of doing this or, or someone's kind of on like going through life like this, a little frozen. And then how they interact when they're having any kind of conflict and starting to even bring their attention to the body to help shift out of it, and then showing them how their body and everything shifts when they're in connection and bringing that. So it becomes also this physical integration of that work. It's very cool. And and I know that you're doing some groups soon and some other things. Tell me about that.
Yes. I'm starting some trauma groups, some virtual trauma groups to really try to help people that more coping tools with how do I deal with this trauma? How do I get out of survival mode? So I like how Dan Siegel talks about the brain, and I'm going to do a super simplified, dumbed down version, but he does the hand model, and you can look up Dan Siegel's got a way more in-depth version, but the hand model of our brain. And this is our limbic system. This is where we have feelings and our behaviors. And then we have our amygdala here. And that's like the fire alarm in our brain. It says, danger, danger, tigers in the room, right? And then we have our prefrontal cortex. And that's our thinking, rational brain right here that can go, the tiger's not in the room anymore. You're safe, right? And so you've heard the term flipping your lid, right? And that's where that comes from, flipping your lid. You go into a trauma response and rational brain is offline, right? I don't know the tiger's not still in the room with me, right? He was in the room, but he's not today. And trauma survivors don't always know that, right? So a lot of what I'm teaching is how do we get this brain back online? How do we get this prefrontal cortex back online? And so some of that is teaching really simple tools that are using our 5 senses to get us back in our body, back in the moment, remind ourselves we are safe. We are here, we are grounded in this moment, and we are safe. And it can be really helpful to actively work with a therapist on practicing those tools, because if we don't practice them when we're not in a trauma response, we won't have access to them when we are in a trauma response. No one thinks of a bright idea when running from a tiger. All we do is fight, flight, or freeze, right? So, and I just really have a passion for trying to help survivors get their life back. When you're running from a tiger, you're in survival mode. You can't be relational. And so also working with couples that are trauma survivors is something I love as well, because they can be triggering each other back and forth and not even really realize it. They're both living in reaction, and you can't be relational when you're in reaction, but they're both just trying to survive day by day because of the stuff they're still carrying.
And it's so interesting, like the magnetism that these couples have for that. Like if they're, avoidant, they tend to look for someone who, wants to mesh with them, even though they're going to push them away. And you see these patterns all the time. And that, goes back to love addiction, love avoidance. But it really is like, they're like magnets, they find each other because it's like they're trying to fix the problem, but they're really just recreating. And so even that first piece to help a couple understand that that's what they're doing, that they're kind of like reliving these reactions, these attachments that they had growing up. And that if they don't start shifting out of that, right, they're gonna stay stuck. And it becomes like the partner can become the tiger, and not that they are, but it feels like it is. And so it just always blows my mind how like those patterns are very clear, and they're different, and everyone's different. But when you start looking at it from a trauma lens, it starts to become very clear. And until we deal with that, all the surface stuff isn't going to really get to it. So it's so great that you do that work. And then you're going to be doing some recovery groups. What does that look like right now? Or what are you thinking?
Yeah, well, so there could be recovery groups for lots of different things, right? And so I'm thinking about some different relationship recovery groups and different substance abuse addiction recovery groups. Right now the active one is the trauma recovery group, but definitely have the possibility of some of those starting up maybe after the holidays. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a lot to plan and like get it started and get the people. And this is what we're doing here too, is like helping get the word out about what Kelli does, what I do. Because again, we have to market, and, we have to do it in a way that's manageable for our salaries, because we have private practices and all that. And so there's this piece of trying to get the word out and let you get to know us a little bit. I know, again, sometimes, working with somebody who you connect to, especially with a therapist, it's essential. Like, it's like one of the number one things is that you connect to your therapist. So it's really helpful if they have a podcast, if they have something, you can listen to them and go, oh, like I sort of like what they have to say, like watching them, I have a feel for them. Because sometimes, you could go see a therapist that's really highly recommended, but they remind you of a sister that betrayed you, or they remind you of someone in your family, and that can really end the relationship, unfortunately. So it's so important to do that. And this is a great way. And I think, the other piece is also even understanding that you have trauma. And Dr. Gabor Mate's The Myth of Normal is a great book, because it really talks about how we all have some. It's not just that person over there. We all have something, because we don't live in a world without war, without crime, without suffering. We all have something. When we start to understand that and not judge ourselves or others, then we can actually deal with the problem, and we don't have to stay stuck. So that's the good news. So I'm passionate too. And is there anything like working with the love addiction, love avoidance cycle that you really find breaks that open, or really starts the couple starting to understand it? What are some things you find helpful?
Mm-hmm. I do feel like when I teach what it is, right? Like an in-depth psychoeducation of what love addiction, love avoidance is, I get these like stares of, oh my goodness, you just told my life, right? And it's these aha moments. And I think that's the first step, is that you don't know what you don't know. And so the first step is just helping them to understand and see what's true for them. What's it showing up like in their lives? And for some people, you might relate to some stuff, but there's some people like, this is my life. I see that. Yeah. And so getting them to just kind of see that, and then each person understanding, how do I show up in relationship? Am I the pursuer or am I the distancer? And then having them each do some of their own healing on like, why do I do that? Where's the setup from that? And then how do we be in relationship with each other now, knowing this about each other? Is this a death sentence? No, it's not. You can be in recovery. You can be relational if you know what this looks like for you. And then we can talk about communication, boundaries, esteeming from within rather than from each other, not getting your value from the other person and how they're feeling about you that day.
Oh, I think that's so big. I think we grew up in a culture where we were sold through Disney. We still watch Disney at my house with my kids. We were sold a deal of happily ever after. We're going to find our Prince Charming happily ever after. And that's just not real.
Right.
For one. And I think, we're not in pursuit of another person to find ourselves. We really have to do the work to know who we are, have happiness within, esteem ourselves from within, that my value doesn't come from outside of me, right? It has to be inside. One of the big pieces too that and it's on his Melody's board, with the love addiction, the dance, is like the love addict, their greatest fear is that of abandonment, but they actually have this underlying fear of being intimate. So they attract very much what they grew up with. So they attract that maybe they had a parent that was not around or abandoning them. And so they attract someone who's busy all the time, who can't relationally connect. And it's subconscious because it feels normal. It feels like home. And even though it might look different and they don't see that right away, it starts playing out. And that's where usually they come to therapy because they're like, yeah, we're having some problems, and then the love avoided, the greatest fear is that of intimacy, but they have the underlying fear of abandonment. So they're attracting that person that wants to imagine kind of suffocate them a little bit.
Yeah.
Or is looking to them to be the hero, looking to them to be their Prince Charming. And then, yeah, I'm your Prince Charming. I'm the one. Like, yeah, that's my role. But then realizing that when we're in a role, it's dysfunctional. We're trying to rescue someone else. And I think as a counselor, we don't fix other people. People come in and we hold space and we give tools and we do work with them, but we're not fixing them. People choose to either get better and do the work or not. And we can't make anyone. That's the other thing. When you drag your spouse into therapy and they want no part of it, it's not going to work, right? They've got to have some buy-in. And so that is really important to make sure you get a therapist that you both like and to get the education around it so that there's buy-in on both parties.
Yeah. I think something else that I've learned for a long time, I thought more from a codependency lens, and that it's not healthy to be codependent and we're not supposed to be dependent on our partner. And something Dr. Sue Johnson talks a lot about is about healthy dependency, how we actually are supposed to be dependent on our partner, but like in moderation, in a healthy way, right? So we don't want to be the extreme of like anti-dependent, right? And we can't depend on anyone, right? And I can't lean on my partner for support. Like I think as human beings, like we're meant to depend on each other for emotional and physical support, but is that in moderation?
I think that's great. And I always think of it as like a team. You're a team, especially when you have kids, because you need to be that back and forth, supporting each other, raising the kids together, being that team. If one parent is doing everything, there's going to be struggle because it's a two-person job. And some people are single parents. I was raised by a single parent. And I think that whenever that happens, if you don't have a lot of community support and other outside support, it can be pretty devastating. So just coming back to these cycles and these workshops, and even just tying it into the book, right? That I wrote a book that it's really going to also help with what Kelli was talking about, the brain, help regulate your brain with daily practices. So happiness is an inside job play, but giving even clients, those daily practices can be so helpful. And then just Kelli, can you share with me some of the daily practices that you do that are helpful for your life and your happiness? And since it's an inside job, we agree.
Yeah. And I love your book, Ria. I will say that I just love the look of it. First of all, it's just so pleasing to look at. It really is. But I love just all the tools it has in there, all the journaling exercises. Really helps you dig into how can I bring happiness into my everyday. It digs into childhood trauma and those things, but also like real life moment things you can do about like seeking intentions, setting intentions, and different exercises. So I just love those. I think it can be helpful for a therapist to use with their clients as well. But yeah, what do I do for daily happiness? Something I teach my clients and that I try to do is actively seek joy every day. So whether I'm going through hard times or good times, like you can still seek joy in that day. Like whether it's the sun is shining today, whether it's a moment with one of my children, they're just doing something sweet or cute or funny, right? It's like seeking the moments of joy and noticing them and really like mindfully feeling and experiencing those. One for me is also connecting to my higher power, who I call God, on a daily basis, is something that I do that fills me up with joy. But I like working with clients on what is it for you? It's individualized for each person on how do you seek joy? Yeah, and I love your book. I think that it can really help clients find true happiness.
I appreciate you. Kelli even wrote a nice piece inside the book. So I'm so grateful for everybody's support. And that was something that I really in my life had to learn. I was very much like I have to do it on my own. Like everything, right? It's like I'm writing a book on my own. And then I realized, no, you don't do even a book on your own, right? You have editors, you have, right? I have people that provided pictures. I have, right, people that supported me. Have a coach. We're not meant we're not meant to be alone. We are meant to be in community, in connection, and that healthy, like that team and asking for help and all of those things. And And I think just like tying in with the happiness piece is, even though I wrote a book about happiness, doesn't mean like I'm not happy all the time, because that's not real. We have all the emotions, and sometimes I need a good cry. Sometimes I need to listen to that sad music and work something out, or because we're multidimensional beings. Being able to access all the emotions, being able to be in the body, to move things out, does allow more space. If you have that intention of I want more happiness, then if we're moving out all the emotions, then we can hold more happiness, because we're not stuffing. When we're stuffing those uncomfortable feelings, it actually takes up space that happiness could be filling too. So there is something about living in intention, like, those moments, right? Being mindful of those beautiful moments. My 3-year-old daughter was doing a puzzle with me, and it was just the most precious thing. I was like, it's so cute, but I was having a hard day. So it's like, but it's not all one thing. So again, I'm so grateful to have you here. Is there anything else you want to share? Your website, any other information so people can find you?
Yeah, sure. So you can go to counselingwithkelli.com to find me. And yeah, look me up. I'm in Goodyear, Arizona. I think there might be a Counseling with Kelli LLC in another state, I found out recently. So I'm in Arizona. If you want to find me, yeah, look me up. Would love to offer a free phone assessment. Anyone that's interested in individual, couples, groups, or a workshop. Yeah, I also do love addiction, love avoidant workshops specific to that. Really, it can be individualized for what you need. So
Thank you for taking the time with us. The Happiness Playbook series. We're so glad to be here, give you guys information for free, just sharing some things we know. We hope that you have and ask for help if you need it, and support you. And thank you so much for joining us. I appreciate it. Any last words?
peace out.